All right, welcome everybody to the Wholesaling Land 2.0 group. Tonight we have a very special guest. I'm very honored to have him. Al Nicoletti is a Florida probate attorney. Honestly, I've done several deals with Al Nicoletti, and he has done nothing but make the deal an amazing experience, all of them. I don't know if you guys know, but has just an amazing record of probates and doing them extremely, extremely fast, which is one of the biggest reasons why I like working with him because he's efficient, he's a great team, he's informative, he, educates me through the entire process so I'm not confused as to what I'm doing and what's going on. Which is why I'm able to help you guys out on deals. Um, I think Al has done the fastest probate that I've heard, which was I think 2 hours in Hernando County in Spring Hill, which is unbeatable in my opinion. So without further ado, I want to bring Al on to just educate my students, my team, just to understand the probate process. As you know, being here in the state of Florida, we come across so many sellers that are a lot older, who have a lot of people on the deed, and we come across probate so often in this market, in all of the markets here in Florida. So it's awesome to have Al as a great resource. I've used him, my students have used him, and I want to bring him on to educate you guys. So thank you, Al, for joining us. If you want to introduce yourself and get the party started, we'd love to have you.
Sounds great, Derby. Thanks so much for the introduction. Always great seeing you. Always great being around your students and helping all of your students on these probate deals when they come up. We've seen, gosh, there's been a bunch in Palm Coast that have popped up, Port St. Lucie. You and I worked on one recently in that area, and every time we get a probate, there's always a challenge. There's always maybe something going on that we got to sort out. But at the end of the day, it can be a smooth process. And I really want to break this down for everybody that's watching, now, later, you name it. So I have a whole PowerPoint. Derby, I don't know if you were able to share it with everybody, but feel
Yeah.
free if in your group, you're more than welcome to do that. Um, I don't know if do I get the sharing ability on this, or let me see.
Yes, go ahead at the bottom and share
Um,
your screen.
All right. Okay. Everybody can see that, I'm sure. So, if you don't know, my name's Al Nicoletti. I'm a probate attorney in Florida. I don't go anywhere else outside of Florida. I'm in Florida, and my biggest specialty is probate. I don't handle things on the title company side, and there's a lot of things I don't do. My bread and butter every day is probate, and I work with tons of investors. I've worked through a lot of issues with title companies on these things. So I help all these investors on these things, and I really want to go through the basic steps with you on what you're going to be seeing, and some real questions and maybe some scenarios we can walk through on this stuff. First thing, no matter what you got to do, scan that QR code and save it. I'll stay here for a minute because a lot of you all may not come across a probate right now. I was hearing a bunch of you talk about the contracts you're locking up and deals. Eventually, you're going to find a probate that's going to come up, and somebody's going to need the help. Somebody's going to reach out to Derby. So if you find something, you got my contact, and especially my social media. There's a lot of things we're not going to be able to cover today. But if you follow me on social media, there's lots of videos, there's lots of education, there's webinars, there's seminars, there's a lot of things that you can learn from. All you got to do is just look me up on Google. There's tons of things to digest from there. So one thing to know, 95 to basically 100% of my practice is probate. I've done over 700 of these. So I have seen a lot. And where the experience has really come into play is especially the deal that Derby had recently. If she would have brought that to me probably, I don't even know, 3 years ago, it would have been a monumental task. But as soon as she brought it to me, I I knew the game plan of how we needed to get around the will and the trust issue, who we needed to get affidavits from, what did we need to do, how did we need to solve it. And so seeing over 700 of these from land, I've seen 12 lots, I've seen houses, I've seen multi-zoned, family zoned, I've seen everything. So just know that there's a lot we've seen, and of course, there's a lot we haven't seen. That's going to be interesting. We've seen a lot of hypotheticals, but I want to talk about how you guys can crush this, especially on asking the right questions, understanding the basics of probate, and it'll help you in your process, especially when you're talking to sellers, because a lot of this can get overwhelming for them and it can get overwhelming for you when the title company says, hey, we got to do probate. But I actually want to make that an easy process for you because it's not what, it's who, and you know where to come for these situations and you know the right questions to ask. So this is what we want to cover today. First thing I'm going to tell you guys is the more we get into the next few years, couple years, 10 years, you're going to see a lot more distressed property situations. And so what I mean by that is, especially with land, a lot of situations where land has been tied up for years, the heirs have been paying the taxes for 10, 20, 30 years, the lot's completely overgrown. It may be an infill lot, it could just be in a whole subdivision. You're going to see a lot more of these, and it doesn't matter where it's zoned, you're going to see this. And these are some of the biggest opportunities that you can get into. I'm going to share some case studies at the end, and especially one of them that Derby's student had was crazy. How we were able to get it done and what the spread was on that. I think it was like one of our first deals too, and it was a probate. And I'll tell you this, don't pass these up. Like when you hear probate, when the title company writes, hey, we got to do probate, or hey, we got to do 3 probates, listen, you gotta get with someone like me to figure out what do we have to do, what do we need to do, and of course, get with Derby to see her experience on this kind of stuff because you don't want to leave money on the table. Some of these spreads can be 50, 60, 100, even 150K. So this is huge. And it's, I believe, one of the biggest untapped niches that we're going to see for a long time. One of the reasons I really got into probate is I got into it because I know where it's going. I know that like short sales and foreclosures back in 2010, 2015 was kind of dying off and we were heading back to that more equity market. With probates, more and more people are moving here, more and more people want to build here. I mean, think about it. How many people have been moving from New York to Florida, from California to Florida? And how many builders do you think know this that want to capitalize on this? So you're going to find more of these opportunities, more, but there's like thousands of properties that just sit around, lots, single family home, you name it, that never have gone through probate. And the family, you never believe it. The family's been sitting on this stuff for years. They just never had somebody come and really give them help or make an offer to their situation. So let me break this process down for you that haven't heard probate. Drop a comment. How many of you, number one, how many of you have ever been through a probate deal? How many of you have passed up a probate deal? Or how many of you have never even heard what probate is? Like, let's get that chat box number blowing up because I want to break this down so you just understand this in a very simple way. First thing you have to know is people that jump into this or that pick up a probate deal think that they have to know all of the terminologies. They have to understand what the court documents are. They have to understand all the legal terminology. They have to understand how you do the process. At the end of the day, you're here to focus on the real estate deal, locking up the contract, keeping the sellers at bay, making sure, like Derby's probably talked about a lot with you, making sure you have your builders lined up, your exit strategy lined up. What do you want to work on? That's your focus, right? Making sure you've connected with the title company and they're doing their process. When with probate, you don't have to know all these words. You just got to get with the legal expert that understands this stuff and focus on that. And with the heirs as well, when they start asking you all these questions, you're not there to answer every single question for them. You're there to just know just enough of where they need to go, just enough of some of the stuff we'll cover. That is big. Now, Derby was really selling me strong with the 2 hour probate. True story. That was during the pandemic. I remember I filed that probate, Hernando County, and it was crazy too, because like the probate had already been done in another state, but it still needed to be done here. Common question that we get a lot for heirs. So don't be fooled by that when they say, oh, the probate was already done. It may have been done in Ohio, still has to be done in Florida. And that's a curveball they give you. So true story, we filed the probate. It was just random, random that we got a case number in like 5 minutes. And I was sitting around with my feet up on the desk. I said, I'm just gonna submit the order. Submitted the order, and 2 hours later, I got the orders. Now, that's not every case. That was a very unusual situation. But I will tell you, a lot of people think that probate takes like 5 months, 7 months, 9 months. I mean, how many of you have been through that where the lawyers or the probate's just dragging and dragging and dragging? That's where I'm here to tell you that this is not something that takes forever. Like these are deals that you can take 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, sometimes even sooner. Like Clay County probates have been moving. Like we filed probate like on a Thursday and got it the next day. So timing is not a concern, but where you have to be, where you must be aware of is it's good to be on the same page with everyone about what the timings look like. So, for example, when Derby had her deal, I remember it was messy. And the first thing I explained to Derby, because I know what's going on, Derby has to explain it to the buyer, the builder. So the first thing I did is I texted her, I emailed her, and I said, Derby, this is weird. This is going to be a weird one. So if you have time, this is what it could be, because who knows what the judge wants, who knows what the county's going to call for. And the thing is as long as we're on the same page with what the expectations are, that's really all that matters. You don't want to sell it to somebody that, oh, this is going to take a week. You don't know that. Oh, this is going to take a day. You don't know that. It's important that, especially for Florida, people work with me. We get on the conference call, we get together, we talk about it. So the seller knows, so you know for your builders, it's very important. So everybody sets the expectation. But these can take a relatively short amount of time. And Clay County's been good, Lee County's been good. We'll talk about these counties too. One big thing that people love about what we do that helps you all is the fact that we'll wait until the closing for the attorney's fees and costs. Look at that, heads nodding, 100%, right? Isn't that a win? Because what does that mean for you? Zero risk. What does that mean for the seller? Zero risk. What's that mean for the builder? Zero risk. It's really on us to figure out, can we get this done and then get it to the finish line so we can give it to the title company. And that helps you all, because a lot of these sellers have been approached before or have gone to lawyers before, and they've been told, hey, you got to pay up front for this. Or even investors have been told by lawyers, oh, we need the money up front for this. Look, the biggest selling point for you all is that you have somebody that you know, a lawyer that you know, that would wait until the closing. That is a huge sell point for anybody that picks up a lot, land, single family, you name it. Now, with probate, you always want to recognize where this probate's coming from, why. And so a lot of sellers will sometimes ask you this question about like, well, how, I don't understand, like, how are we getting to this point? Where is this probate coming from? The big picture is that whenever a probate's called for or probate's needed, it always starts with the title. That is the root source. So the title, what's the title? The deed. Now, if the person on that deed is deceased in Florida, we need probate. Bonus for you all, because this comes up as a question. You need the probate, will or no will. Will or no will, it still needs probate. And if it's been probated in another state, it still needs it here in Florida. You can't just take those documents and record them in Florida and say, we're good to go. These are the things that sellers ask you. And they say, hey, well, we've already done it. Can't we just do it? No, it's got to be done here. Now, let's take it a little bit deeper. Sometimes on the title, you'll see that there's two people and you're talking with the person, the seller, the seller, and you're like, well, here's the question. And this is what you ask them. Well, ma'am, sir, I'm looking at the title and your name's not on the deed. Who are you in relation to the person on the deed? And that's a very important question, because if they say cousin, we got to stop, because that's really far down the line. If they say spouse or child, all right, you got something you're working with. And then you got to find out, are either of those people alive? Are they around? And they'll tell you, or sometimes they won't tell you, but they'll tell you, they should tell you, right? We all know how this game goes. So when you notice that and that somebody's on it and deceased, we need probate. And sometimes it could be 8 people. We've seen cases where somebody owned that property and had a probate back in the 80s, and the property deeded to 8 people. And 6 of those people are dead and 2 of them are alive. And people ask, well, Al, do we just need to do 1 probate? No, we need to do 6. Well, if your spread on that land deal is 10K, that's not going to work, right? But if your spread on it is 80K, well, what's the story of the 6? See where I'm going with that? So we always have to find out what's going on, but just know this: in any realm, if somebody's on the title and they're deceased, we need probate. Now, what is it? So what probate is what we're doing is taking the name out of the deceased person's title, the name out of that title, and we're moving it to who the true heirs are. What that is we're filing paperwork. We're gathering the documents, the death certificate, their names, the lots that you're buying, the 4 lots that you're buying. We're naming all of those assets and we're putting it in the documents. We're sending it to the heirs, then to sign, and then we're filing that in the courthouse. And eventually, we get court orders that actually says, now all of them own the title to the property. What do we do then? That's when we give it to the title company. See, there's different players here. There's probate lawyer, there's title company. So once we get the probate done, we send it to the title company. Title company updates their reports. Boom. Now they will get with you on what's needed to close on the property. That's it. Just moving the title out of the name of the deceased over to the heirs. So who asks you these questions are the sellers. Because before they even get to me, they sometimes have a conversation with you. So if they ask that to Derby, Derby knows now to talk about, look, it's a simple process. We're moving the title out of the name of who's on it now to you guys, but we got to get this paperwork done so we can close on the property. Without that, I can't buy the property. I can't close. I can't come in on this. And we need your participation to get this done. And by the way, we need all these heirs and whoever they are, whether it's 1 or 6, we need them all. It can be a huge deal breaker or deal maker if you can do it. But Florida wants probate. If another investor is in Texas, that, oh, no, you just need an affidavit of heirs. We're not in Texas. Oh, in Georgia, we're not in Georgia. So just know that Florida's got different rules. Now, you'll find there's sometimes certain deeds that'll have magic language to it. Now, if you see certain deeds that say like John Smith and Sally as husband and wife, and John died, but Sally's still alive, great. You just need Sally. Or if you see that the property's titled in a trust. I had a weird one today, Derby. So it's a long story I couldn't even get into right now. If you want to ask me at the end, I'll explain it. But it was crazy. It was titled in a trust. Well, trusts avoid probate. So, bonus for the group, if you find a property titled in a trust, your first question to the family is, where's the trust? Where's a copy of it? Because who needs it is the title company. The title company needs it. And actually, it'd be great for you to see it because it'll name a trustee on the document. Why is that important? Because if there's a trustee, that is who you need for your contract. That is who the title company needs to help close the deal. That is your main source. And if there's two co-trustees, you need both. But it's important to ask these questions when you see, oh, it's in a trust. Well, we don't need probate, hopefully. We need to get with the heirs about where the trust is. Copy's okay. Sometimes you'll see John and Sally with joint tenants with rights of survivorship. John died, survival of the fittest, moves over to Sally. All you need is a death certificate to Sally. And so you don't need probate there. But here's where it gets really tricky for people. And this is a fun land game. I'm gonna get some people really thinking about this. So where land gets fun, because it's different than homestead property, is a lot of these people back in the 80s and 90s, and the lots that you're going to find in Port St. Lucie and Lehigh Acres, all great areas, Charlotte County, Sarasota, Polk, all of them. Some of these people just bought it in their own name only, and there's no spouse on it. And there's nobody else but them. And they bought it then. Here's the usual story. They bought it because back in the 80s, they had a dream idea that they were going to eventually retire and build property in Florida. Never happens. They die. They don't tell their family about it. And then you all are cold calling and doing direct mail. And then they just find out about the lot. That's what happens. And so what's next? The usual story ends up being that the person died, has a surviving spouse, and sometimes that's it. Well, great, you need the spouse. Then sometimes it goes deeper. There's not just a spouse, but there's kids of the person that died that's with the spouse. So you just need the spouse. Let's go deeper. Sometimes you find out the person died, has a surviving spouse, and he has kids that are not her kids. So what happens there? Not only do you need the spouse, but you need the kids also. And it's 50% to spouse and 50% divided among the kids. One more. Ready, Derby? So somebody dies, has a surviving spouse, and he has kids with her. But she had kids with somebody that's not him. 50% to spouse and 50% to the kids. And I tell you this because a lot of this story comes out during the conference calls, but it's important to know for your contract purposes on who you're going to need. It's not just going to be one, it's going to be all. You're going to need the spouse and the kids. These deals are really, they're really important. You cover your basis. And so that's why I have here only husband, only wife, because these happen where it's just one probate, but then who do you need after that? Now we'll get deeper on some other stuff, but that's what I want to go through. This right here is a real roadmap for you all on figuring out who in the world am I talking to in relation to the person on the deed, right? None of us want to be wasting our time. If Derby's got a deal and it's a probate, She knows there's some basic questions, whether it's a will, a spouse, a kid, at least the basics. And so the first thing you have to find out is, did the person on that title have a will or no will? It's usually no will. There's a will. Let's see it. Where is it? We got to know. If there's no will, you got to ask these questions. Is there a surviving spouse? Let me take it a step further, because we got to be really clear about this. Was there a surviving spouse, or is there a surviving spouse? Because sometimes the person is on the title, died, and had a surviving spouse, and she or he died. So what does that mean? 2 probates. So we have to know these little things. Was there or is there? And if there's not, okay. If there is, we got to get through this next line of questioning about the kids. The kid part, you got to find out how many kids ever, not just one, but them all. Because what happens on the phone call? You get comfortable. Something about, I don't know if it's the way I ask or something about my voice. Like I pulled it out the other day on a call where there was a brother and a sister. And I said, how many kids ever? They never told the investor. And they said, there was a kid from 40 years ago. Like, so it's like, whoa, like what's that story about? Or sometimes they'll tell you, no, it's just me. Or I'm the only one left. What does that mean? Right? And you got to be careful with that, because you guys don't want to waste your time. Everybody's time is super valuable in this business. We're high volume, we're moving fast, and we want to know what's going on. How many kids ever? So when Derby asks, they say 5. All right. Where is everybody? Can we get everybody on the same page? And sometimes they don't have kids. Sometimes they don't have a spouse. Next one you got to find out is, at the time the person died, any parents alive? If there are, where? It's happened. Mom's been alive, dad's been alive, it's happened. Sometimes no. We go down. If it's no. Brothers, sisters, half brothers, half sisters, ever. Same thing. Listen, the way I word things has totally been refined over the last 7 years, because you'd be surprised at the answer you will get when you ask it one way versus another. I've pulled more things out of people by phrasing it with that one word. They laugh, but it's a true word about ever, because it matters. Sometimes we had a case one time where the 13 brother sisters, there were 6 half blood and 7 full bloods. It was crazy. But we have to ask these. Sometimes there's nieces, nephews, right? We'll get nieces and nephews, or aunts and uncles. I have a case right now with cousins too. But that's a big tree that had to be done before we committed to doing just 2 cousins. My point for you all is, this is a roadmap. This is to give you a roadmap. If you talk to somebody in Lehigh and they say they're the nephew, how do we get there? How do we get to nephew? Is there anybody else in between? Really try to parse that down. It's important. I will tell you all day, it's super important. Now, the will part. If there is a will, this is where it gets interesting, and I've had to learn this, but it is what it is. You have to learn that in Florida, we need the original ink will. Keywords: original ink will, not the PDF version, not the photocopy version. Because if we have the original, it's an original. If it's only a copy, it's presumed revoked and destroyed. And now Al has to figure out, how do we get around this and what do we need to do? And I think Derby, we had that one case where we had to get around the trust or the will, and everybody consented to it and left it to one person because it wasn't either properly executed, and it made it way easier. And let me tell you, these questions all matter. But for you all, where's the will? We need to know where the will is. And if there's no will, that's that line we went through. Um, it's just what Florida does. They have a whole line that we go through, and that's what I just broke down. And just for Derby, because we haven't talked about it in a long time, I did it on stage. By the way, drop a comment. How many of you want to see Derby do Wholesaling Live 102 live event, like in person event? And actually,
Really?
everybody attend that. I want to. I did the probate Macarena there, and that's it. Like we go down, we go up, we go out, we go down, we go up, we go exactly. We have a whole system to this, and it's just to make you remember that when you get these kind of deals, this is what you're thinking about. This is what you're looking for, and how did we get to that point? Now, I know everybody's going to have their pens out for this. What are the hot counties I'm seeing that have been really hot for probate in 2024? So, looking at the map, definitely Lee County, Charlotte County. I've seen a lot going on in Manatee right now. Polk has been hot for land. Polk has been pretty hot for land. Osceola had a good deal. Brevard's different, guys. Brevard is a different bird. That county is really strict with a lot of things. Like if Derby had a deal there, me and her, we'd have a discussion on Brevard because that county has different rules, different procedures. However, Palm Bay is hot. That whole Port Malabar, I think that's where Port Malabar is. Port Malabar is hot area. Titusville's hot area. Volusia County, Seminole's been good. Clay's been good. Marion, let's talk about Marion. A lot of people focusing in Marion right now for land. I don't know what's going on with Marion, but I think that's another booming area with Ocala. Outside of that, Alachua's been pretty good, but then the Panhandle, a lot of stuff going on over in this area in the Panhandle. And the probates are a little bit slower in the Panhandle, especially like Santa Rosa is a little slow. But there's been a lot of land lots in these areas, Bay County. The point is that there's going to be certain areas that are going to be hot, and sure, Duval, absolutely. Duval, you're going to find infill lots in Duval. There's still land to be bought in Duval. But in terms of where there's a lot more high volume for land, those are a lot of the areas. So definitely Lee and I'm sure you all have finding stuff in Lehigh Acres. Lehigh Acres more than ever is still on fire. Still in even Northport. Northport, and I forgot somebody was talking about Rotunda. I think we had something that popped up recently with that area. Charlotte County is another booming area right now. And for lead sources for a lot of this stuff, I mean, pre-foreclosures, that's going to be single family homes, but the land lots, the tax delinquencies and the properties that are heading to tax deed auction in like 4 weeks, 5 weeks, like those have been hot. And a lot of people ask, like, why are those hot? Well, they've been sitting around for a while. They're going to lose the property. They got to do something. And if they need probate, they can't sell that sell that property before probate's done. And so a lot of these are hot leads, the tax delinquencies, the out-of-state owners, the ones that you see that they're in Illinois, they're in Ohio. A lot of these people don't want to keep these properties, and we hear it all the time. It's just the same thing again and again. But no matter what, you got to just think distressed properties, even the code violations. I mean, I'm sure you'll find land lots that have code violations just because of the overgrown nature of it. If you go if you get a property with probate and you need to get to the real estate contract part, just know that there's no such thing as a probate contract. But my biggest advice is this: you got to make sure that you're not scrambling over and over to get addendums signed with heirs. Give yourself some time, as long as your buyers and buyers or builders are okay with this, because I don't know what that's like. But give yourself some time. Don't make it just 30 days. Space it out, because the last thing that everybody wants to do is keep having to sign addendums and extensions, or do 60 days or 75 days. Just as long as you can space it out, because title insurance is going to need this. And most important, if there's 7 heirs, how many do we need for the contract? 7. We have to have them all. And so not just one on the contract. We get those. Derby's got a deal and there's 7 heirs and she's got one. She's going back to the drawing table to get all 7. 2, 2, 4, 4. That's the big picture with that. Some of these deals, there's just crazy spread in probate deals. And one of the biggest reasons I'm so hot about it is because I know what a lot of people will get when they come across these deals. Some of these deals are their biggest deals ever. Had a guy on my show talk about how he made over $200,000 on 2 lots. Huge spread, hot areas. And these are deals that it wasn't hard to solve. Let me talk about this for a second, because it's going to throw some people for a loop. So let's just say you picked up a probate deal in Lehigh and we found out that the grandma owned the property. One of the things that you got to be aware of is it may not be just grandma's probate we're having to do. Sometimes during the analysis, we're finding out that there's not just one probate, but she had a child that died after grandma, and that child had a spouse that died after that child, and that spouse has 2 kids. So for one property, 3 probates. So you really got to run your numbers on what that's like. And the thing is, on the deal that this guy had for over 200K, it wasn't hard to solve. The challenge was getting the other people to be on board with each other. That was it. The probate part wasn't hard. It added more money to the pot because it was going to be more expensive, but it's getting the other people. I have one that we just signed up the other day. It's 5 probates, 1 property, 5. And so when we do the whole analysis and some people die, these people die after the other, we're having to do multiple probates. But this is why you want to work with really good title companies. I'll leave that to Derby to point you in that direction for title companies. Really important for title companies that you have a really good one that understands what's going on. They work with investors. They've worked with messy deals. Not that they've had experience. Like, for me, in my world, we do this every single day. Like, this is it. Like, for title companies, there's ones out there that this is it. Like, they work with messy deals all the time. And for you all, what's so great when you get into these probate deals is that once you do one, and eventually somebody drops a comment in a Facebook group, or somebody in this group's been through one, Derby's been through multiple, it helps when they've been through it, because they can help guide you. And these stories just last, because it's something in your tool belt as an investor that you can help others JV on, so you can help them overcome it or work with them. Derby can explain that one. She'll help you on all these as they come along. And just know that with these, you want to work with the right experts on this. If you leverage the experts, you leverage the people that will help leverage the title company, people that can help you find heirs. It really makes a difference. And especially the fact that with us, waiting until the closing to get paid helps you all. We have speed, we have efficiency. You just have to leverage the right people to get in this stuff. And those were the times, you know that. Now, some of the case studies. I built this recently, but some of these case studies will help you give a real picture, big picture on what you will expect if you actually get one. They're not all going to be like this, right? Some deals are going to be $2,000 spreads. Perfect. It's still a win. But then some of these are going to be $100,000 spreads. So this was, I think, a Derby student. This was a Derby student. So I remember where I was like 2 years ago. I got a call. It was her, I think it was her first deal ever or first probate, and it was around Christmas. And I remember she was like, "Ow, we're against the clock." They had gone to another lawyer before, but we're against the clock. The builder wants to back out. Like the builder was like ready to back out of the deal. And she goes, "Hey, but we just found out we got to do probates." Really nice lot, great area. And the problem that there was some of the heirs were just so old that they didn't talk to each other and they hadn't talked in years. And so some of these probates that we're doing, we're putting families together for the first time in like years. And they're talking on the phone for the first time, catching up for years. When we went through this, the probates weren't hard. At the end of the day, the probates just took a matter of 6 weeks. We had to do three because of what the title showed. I think there were three different people on the title, three probates for them. But at the end of the day, they had locked it up for 80 and then assigned it out for 180. And $100,000 assignment is a game changer for people's businesses. That like changes everything for people. And so if they didn't know where to find me, I don't know if they would have gotten this done. I don't know if they would have gotten this done if they didn't know the expectation behind it or who to get with, how to get with people. And then, of course, figure out the structure on the back end with the end buyer, explaining to the buyer that, hey, we got to go through probate, but this is what we're looking at. It was a game changer. There was another one where there was a property in the Panhandle, another great area. And the investor was stumped at first because they looked at the title, they were in touch with somebody, looked at the title, and one person was dead, the other person was alive, but they had no idea where that person was. They just knew that there was somebody dead. They thought probate, they thought ow. So we solved that scenario. Person died, no will, no spouse. I think there were just two kids ever. They got in touch with them, they skip traced them, they got in touch, they got under contract. That part was easy. But then they had to locate the other person, and that was actually the challenge. They eventually found them. But the probate took 8 weeks, got them both under contract. I don't have the numbers on those, but Fort Walton Beach is not an inexpensive area. And so whether they took it down or they did, and if they did an assignment, sure, it's good. But people in the past would have backed out of this deal. They didn't know where to go. They didn't understand skip tracing. I know Derby's talked about skip tracing on some reels. Skip tracing, there's a lot of things to pay attention to with this stuff. There was a deal too where investor found it from a random cold call. The heirs wanted nothing to do with the property. See, that's what makes probate property so special, is because there's not really an attachment to the properties, especially land. Land. Nobody living there. Nobody's there. Nobody cares about it, especially probate properties. They're done paying the taxes. They're tired of paying the taxes. So on this one, it was a house, but it doesn't matter. You could have land situations. It was one property, one probate, four heirs ready to sell. Probate's done in 6 weeks, and they made over $120,000 on the assignment. These heirs couldn't have signed the probate documents any faster. They couldn't have signed the contract any faster and just wanted to get this deal over with. We've seen wild things with double foreclosures that we've had to get canceled multiple times and do two probates, and people thought that was impossible. These are possible deals. Now, one that you all will enjoy because it was a land deal, South Florida. There's a lot that the family had, that the family owned for years. I'm talking like 50 years. And it sat between a commercial multi-family zoned area. It was nestled right in a really good area. But the problem is that nobody could solve it. They went to 4 different lawyers, nobody could solve it. And they're on the title, there were 8 people. And so nobody knew what had to be done because nobody asked the questions. The question was, how many of those people are alive? And only 2 were. And so this property was about to head to a tax deed auction in 3 days. We did a whole analysis, ended up finding out there's only 3 heirs ultimately. And once the investor got it up under contract, they saved it from the tax deed sale. They knew what the numbers were for us because we had to do 6 probates. Ultimately, if you move the pieces down, it went to the 3. And so we had to do 6 probates. This one took 6 months. I mean, South Florida is a little different too for 6 probates. But on here being all in 30K, they found an end buyer for 200. That's commercial multifamily zone areas. Like, that's a steal for people. But the challenge is some of these issues that pop up. Most of you won't get a deal like this with 6 probates. You're going to get the deal with 1 probate or 2 probates, and it can still be that kind of assignment deal, assignment fee. So these pop up all the time. There was one that was a citrus grove. This is a citrus grove. And nobody knew how to solve this one either. And can you imagine if any of you picked this one up? I mean, Derby's probably dying to pick this one up, right? I mean, who knows what you can do with this? Who knows what builder is going to hold on to this? Maybe it would not be a great area for people to buy and build, but this one, they were ready to go. They had builders ready to come in, ready to assign it. And the investor was so hell-bent on doing quiet title. They said the title company says, just do quiet title, quiet title. Let's rewind it a little bit. If there's anything you need to know about quiet title, it's 2 things. It's long and it's expensive. And number 3, I'm not a fan. If we have to do it and the money's there, the time is there, okay. But I'm not the biggest fan of quiet title. I pushed for probate. And when I pushed, I found out that there were 4 heirs on one end, there was 1 heir on the other end, and I think we had to reopen another probate that dropped it down to the 4. I said, it's really not that bad. Can you just get them? All right, all right. 2 weeks later, all under contract. Probate took 5 weeks, and the assignment was over 100K. I mean, again, how many people would have passed that up? Investors get really put off by probate. Another one, and this is where you got to leverage experts. Another one is this heir was so worried because this can happen with single family or land. It doesn't matter if there's a house in that picture. Doesn't matter. This one, there was 1 heir ultimately, 1 probate, 1 heir. But he was ready to sell. He was motivated, but the problem was he was so worried about any creditors of his relative. And so that was the pain point. The pain point wasn't signing the contract. The pain point wasn't the deal. He was ready to go. The pain point was worried about any debt being thrown on him for his relative. So what do you guys do? Well, listen, you can't answer that, but let me point you to somebody that can, because me and him walked through that, and I explained everything about that property and explained what happens. And once he heard it, good to go. Had nothing to do with anything about any other heirs, had to do about a legal issue that we had to figure out. They made over 100,000 and were able to hire on more VAs and more acquisitions for their team. Just another deal. Another one, they couldn't find the kid. Couldn't find the kid. I was standing at the Jacksonville airport on the phone with the investor about this deal from the very beginning. And I said, if there's a kid, you got to find him. And they got with people, they got with an air searcher. It was a crazy story. And 6 months later, through Facebook commenting, through Facebook messaging, The guy finally reached out. He knew about the property. He knew about everything. He just was in the middle of the Pacific Ocean and he was ready to sell. It was one heir. And so what's the moral of the story? Well, not the fact that there's always heirs somewhere, but when you get with the right people to find these people, your deals can happen. You just got to get with the right people that can find the right people or the software. And they did. They didn't assign it, but they took it down as an Airbnb. But the probate only took 3 weeks. Another one in the books for people. And sometimes you'll get these no heir situations. There's always an heir. You got to get with skip tracing. You got to get with the experts to find out where these heirs are. And just know with land, run your numbers. Land deals I've seen have been some of the tightest deals for people. A lady called me a couple weeks ago. She had a land deal for 10K. I said, what's the story? And she told me that the great, 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 great grandfather passed and owned the property. It's not happening. There's no way. There's too many in that line to do for 10K because I think she was only assigning it out for 20. You couldn't go through all those potential probates and do that deal. So you got to run your numbers because if you get one where it's grandma and you're snatching it up for 9 and you're signing it out for 30 and it needs 3 probates, are you good? Right? Or, are you assigning it out for 80, but it's definitely going to need 5? Are you good? Just make sure you always run your numbers to make sure this makes sense, because as soon as you get people like me involved, that it's going to mean money taken away either from the seller side or the buyer side. So do your numbers make sense? Derby, what I'll do is I'll even send this to you when we all hop off tonight, but I have a checklist for any potential deals. So any potential probates in Florida that you find, the two biggest things I do now is, number one, I set up an intro call in Calendly. It's super important that you know our process, our systems, and how we work. But also, this checklist is golden for you guys. If we were at, well, we'll be there one day, but when we're at Derby's Wholesaling Live 102, I hand these out in a cardstock paper because you can hold it in your notebook. And if you have a seller that calls, you can pull it right out, or you can pull out the PDF. Got to know where these things are. Ask these questions. Where's the death certificate? You can't get going with the probate without the death certificate. Where's the title commitment? Does everybody know what a title commitment is? All right. So what is a title commitment? The title company, when you go under contract, seller and buyer, and you open up escrow at the title company, eventually the title company is going to run a report. It'll take about a couple of days to a week, sometimes 2 weeks, who knows, depending on the county. They'll run a report and they'll generate this document. And that document, called the title commitment, has requirements on what is needed to close for that buyer to get title insurance to the property. That title commitment tells us Florida proper probate proceedings required for John Smith. Or it'll say number 12, probate for John Smith. Number 13, probate for Sally Sue. Number 15, this. It'll say it. It'll list it all. We have to see those documents. That is one of the biggest things in my law firm that we want to see, because land deals get messy. All these deals get messy, and we got to make sure we're doing it for the right people. Want to see the contract, want to see the deed. The contract, again, I don't care what anybody uses for the contract. You all do what you want to do for that. But the biggest picture is, do you have everybody on that contract? Because the last thing any of you want is you get to that closing table and somebody goes, well, I didn't sign it. I'm not signing your deed. Seen that plenty of times. Again, scan that QR code. If you didn't do it in the beginning, there's so much that we couldn't even, I mean, we could get through questions on this, I'm sure, after Derby, but there's so much that I have videos on my YouTube channel, my Instagram, Facebook. And again, if you scan it, if you find a probate, you'll have my email. Email is the best way if you want to get in touch with me for a new potential probate, because we get so many calls. Email me, al@alnicoletti.com. And happy to go through some questions, Derby.
Yes, there are people that have several questions actually. If you guys want to raise your hand, we only have about 5-ish minutes to answer questions, to get a hard stop at 7:30. And then Al, do you have a way of them to contact you if they have questions? Should they just email you?
Yeah, let me drop this in the chat. So I'm dropping my email in the chat right now. You may want to take a picture of it before we all hop off. But that's my best email. And if you scan the QR code, it should be right there.
Perfect. All right, let's go ahead and start off with Amber and then Jameson, I think had a question.
I honestly have several, but first was how long does a simple probate take? Just like a, basic if it's pretty straight and forward.
So what county are we in?
Okay, so it varies by county. Let's say like Lee County.
I love Lee. Lee can be lightning. Like there's sometimes we'll file a probate and Lee will be done in like 4 days.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes there's a judge that we get assigned to that takes 4 weeks. But more or less, Lee County is one of our favorites. It's one of the fastest.
What is one of the longest then you would say that you've seen, like without having to necessarily jump through hoops? It's still simple, but it might be like a slower county.
It's a great question. Probably Brevard. Brevard's probably the slowest. Lake is pretty snail. Yeah, those two.
Okay. And those are probably what, like for the 4 weeks?
So in Brevard, let me tell you how Brevard works real quick. Brevard will submit it, and then the clerks do the review before it even gets to the judge.
Mm,
And they take 3 to 4 weeks to even review it. Then there's something they don't like. They kick it back. They tell us to redo the discrepancy and then resubmit. Then they take like another 3 weeks to review it. You see where I'm going?
okay,
And
got
then, so we've tried to learn how to overcome that. Like it is part of our process to try to overcome those issues when they pop up. So Brevard's probably the longest.
Okay. Let me see. You said something about if there are 7 heirs, you need 7 signatures. Is that even if there's an executor?
Yes.
Okay. And is that the contract that they sign and at closing, or you do
Yes.
one or the other?
Well, if you get a situation with an executor and the money in the deal makes sense, we'll talk about what that looks like. But yes, you need them all.
Okay. Okay, good to know.
Yes.
Okay, I have more questions, but I'll let somebody else go because I know we don't have time.
Shoot me an email. We'll do an intro call. Sounds good.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Jameson, did you have a question?
I didn't have a question. I was just going to tell the story about I went through one with Al this year where the seller said they only had 5 siblings, and then when we got on the phone, Al started asking questions, and they was like, "Is everybody on board?" And then they said, "Oh no, we got another brother." It was like, where is that brother? And nobody knew. It was like, is everybody on board? So they had to get off the phone, and then the probate didn't go through. So it was like that stuff does happen. I don't know if
Jameson,
you remember that, Al.
was that the one where they were on the phone and then they wanted the guy to quit claim it over to all of them?
Yeah, yes.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh. I was
yeah,
so glad you were on the conference call for that, because
yeah,
right then and there you heard exactly the problem.
yes, yeah. And then I had like one 2 years ago. I don't know if you remember this, where the person was not even a relative. They did a probate in Illinois. I don't know if you remember this one, Al, but she did a probate in Illinois. She wasn't even a part of the family, but she was able to do a probate on her friend in Illinois. And when they got to Florida, Al had to go through and see what's going on. And the person had a son that lived in Hungary. And the deal was like for 15K. He was like, Nah, I don't think this is gonna work, James. We
Yeah.
gotta find them. We gotta spend money. So I don't think this is gonna work. But yeah, so it goes down like that a lot.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Angela, we have, I see that your hand's up and then we'll go to Jarrell. Oh, you're muted. Hold on. Let me unmute you real quick, Angela. Go ahead.
Hey, sorry, I'm at the, if you hear a lot of noise, I'm at my kids' practice. Um, I had a question. I had a seller who started, I'm still in communication with them. They started the probate process, but it's taking a long time.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure, like, how is the process if they wanted to switch over to you? Is that something that they can do, or once you start with an attorney that you got to stick with them?
I think it depends. So there's a couple things. It depends on what stage they're at. It may not be worth switching over if they're right at the end.
Okay.
Also, it may not be the lawyer, it may be the county that they're facing. So,
This is in Charlotte County.
hmm. Um, I don't know. Charlotte's been pretty fast too. I, the best way to answer it is one, I'd have to see it, but two, the heirs would have to really be willing to want to switch. And you got to be careful because what's the lawyer owed for money too? You don't want to have them switch and then the lawyer sticks them
Right.
with a bill for $5,000.
Yeah,
You
that makes
know?
sense. Yeah, I don't know how far they've gone because I know one, the process was because of the money. They were, had started kind of late because of money, um and that was their issue, was money. But now
Mhm.
that I know that you do not charge an upfront fee, all of it, because I've let some deals go because of the fact that, like this person, I'm still in communication with them, but they're still going through the process.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm glad to know that I can be able to send them over to you once I come across some more deals.
Yeah, let me know. And the biggest ones are when it's never been in probate, but we're
Okay.
not going to say no to ones that are in probate, but there's definitely going to be some factors in consideration before pulling the trigger on that you don't want to disrupt on your end, because you don't want to find out that they're just going to be stuck with a bill. You don't want to be, you don't want to
Right.
find out that they're right at the finish line when you could have gotten it and then they got to start a whole new process. So but yeah, no, now you know where to come for sure.
Okay. Appreciate that. Somebody asked a question that I hadn't even thought about that, which was the average of the fees. Like, because is there like a starting price, or is it based off of like the amount that we're closing on? Like, what is the average of what the prices? Because I'm always getting a lot of questions from sellers on, how much is the average cost for like a probate?
Best way to answer that is you got to tell them that it's tough to answer that until you get the right analysis with the lawyer, because you don't want to be throwing a number at them and then they have the number in their head and then we find out we have to do grandmas and it needs 3 probates and then I'm like, well, we're probably
Okay.
looking at like 9,500 to 10K, and then they go, well, I don't know, I talked to her and she said it was going to be like, and they always do that over and over. So I just say, look, let's have the conversation with Al, let him figure it out on the call, and then we'll walk it from there.
Okay, sounds good. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, anytime.
Mhm.
All right. And then we have our final question, which is Jarrell. Go ahead.
Hey Al, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good, man. What's going on?
I'm doing well, man. I appreciate your time. Quick question. Now, I know you only practice in Florida, which is fine, but Texas and Florida laws are pretty similar in regards to probate, either or. But I just wanted to ask because I'm dealing with a current situation with a seller that lives in Texas for some property in Florida. So they
Okay.
the sibling open probate for the deceased sibling, but the ex-wife or widowed wife is still alive. So it's a weird situation. There's minors that are in the situation, I guess the sibling has already claimed legal guardianship over the children, even though their mother is still alive, which doesn't make sense to me. Um, and we're just trying to, I guess me and the seller are trying to figure out how the sister, if the sister has any legal right to anything since she opened up probate on behalf of the dead brother.
Yeah, lot to dive in on that. Have they opened up probate already in Florida?
No, so they're trying to get through the one in Texas first, and then they'll go to the one in Florida, because there's some property in Texas that I'm trying to buy as well. But they told me about the property in Florida that I'm trying to wholesale. So I'm just trying to figure out what, if that's typically, because I'm pretty sure you've come across this type of situation before.
The best answer is I can't tell you what is going to happen in Texas because whatever they're doing in Texas sounds already wacky. But when they come to Florida, that's where we're going to go down that whole list of will or no will, surviving spouse or spouse that died after, and kids ever before you even get to siblings. And so if you're talking about minor children of the person that died that owned the property, okay, not totally out of the picture yet, but where's the mother? What's the net proceeds to the minor? See, like one of the good issues that Derby had on her deal is the heir wasn't a minor and it just passed that age. And so we were like, now we don't have to worry about that issue. But had he not been 18, now we're talking about where's the parent of that person and what are the net proceeds going to be to those minors, because that'll throw a whole thing for a loop if it's not. So I would just
So I was just gonna ask. So typically, I'm wondering because I'm going through the process now. Usually, is it quicker for you to set up just the conservatorship rather than going through the legal probate, or do you still have to do the full probate in order to set up the guardianship uh for those minors?
So you definitely still have to go through probate here, but the the loophole with avoiding guardianship is where's the surviving parent and are the net proceeds under 15,000 to the minor? If you
Oh
have
yeah,
the
no,
net,
they're not.
what's that?
They're much higher. It's like $50,000 to $60,000. It's two children.
Two children and the proceeds are going to be more than 15.
Yeah,
Yeah, you need two guardianships then. So it's not just probate, but you're going to need two guardianships.
got you. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, here's that. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Thank you so much, Al, for coming on to the Wholesaling Land 2.0 group and just dropping gems for us. I hope that everyone on this call was able to, or even the ones watching or the recording, were able to learn something new about probate and can come and trust that Al will get your probate done for you if in the event you have a probate deal. So yeah, thank you so much, Al. And we'll see you soon. Definitely.
Thank you so much, Derby, for having me on this again. And thank you to everybody for sticking around and asking great questions. And I hope you learned a lot and you know where to find me.
Yes, thank you so much. Everyone have a great night and I will see you guys on Friday. Bye guys. Thank you, Al.
Thank you.